Hi, welcome to the Aftermath Tales. Ready for a new story? Very well, let's begin.
How do you know when the person you've loved for 20 years has already left you, even though they're still sleeping in the same bed? My name is Vivian Rowan, and until a few years ago, I thought I had a beautiful life. I was wrong about a lot of things, it turns out. But let me start from the beginning. I'm Vivian, and I was married to Liam Simpson for 24 years. We couldn't have children. My body simply wouldn't allow it. Some women are blessed with fertility. I was blessed with other things, or so I used to tell myself. Both my parents passed away when I was in my early 20s, and being an only child, I learned early that family is something you create, not just something you're born into. That's why when we adopted Dane, I poured every ounce of love I had into that little boy. He became my everything, our everything, or so I thought. After the divorce, I reclaimed my maiden name, Rowan. It felt like reclaiming myself. Dane was 8 when he came to us, clutching a worn stuffed elephant and looking at the world with those serious brown eyes. He was cautious at first, as if he was waiting for us to change our minds. But slowly, beautifully, he began to trust us. I watched him grow from a quiet, observant child into a brilliant young man. He was naturally gifted with computers, spending hours in his room tinkering with code and building websites. When he turned 18, he wanted to move out and start his adult life, but his online IT business was still in its infancy. "Stay until your business picks up," I told him, ruffling his hair like I used to when he was small. "No rush." He insisted on paying rent once he started earning money. "I'm not a kid anymore, Mom. I should contribute." That was Dane, always thoughtful, always wanting to do the right thing. Liam and I were so proud. We'd raised a good man. His business flourished. Within 3 years, he had more clients than he could handle, most of them based in California. When he was 26, he sat us down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had countless family dinners and homework sessions. "I need to move to California," he said, his voice heavy with reluctance. "Most of my clients are there, and I'm losing opportunities by being so far away." I saw the conflict in his eyes, the excitement of professional success warring with the guilt of leaving us behind. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," I said, reaching across to squeeze his hand. "Oregon isn't that far from California. You can visit whenever you want." He did visit. He called every week. He sent us pictures of his new apartment, his growing business, his life taking shape. I thought we were the luckiest parents in the world. I was wrong about that too. The change in Liam was gradual at first. He started working late, staying on the phone in his home office with the door closed. When I was in the living room, he'd find somewhere else to be. Conversations became one-sided, with me talking and him grunting responses. 4 months. 4 months of feeling like I was living with a stranger. "What's wrong?" I asked him one evening. "Are you missing Dane? Because I miss him too, but he's doing so well." "I'm just tired from work." He'd say, "You shouldn't worry about anything." But I did worry. I worried constantly. The night everything fell apart, Liam came home drunk. Actually drunk, something I'd never seen in our 24 years of marriage. He could barely stand straight as he fumbled with his keys. "Liam, what happened?" I rushed to help him, trying to steady him as he swayed. "Are you okay?" He shoved me away, harder than necessary. "Don't touch me." "Liam, please, let me help you." "I don't love you anymore." The words exploded from him like a dam bursting. "I stopped loving you years ago. 6 years. 6 fucking years." I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. "What are you talking about?" "I'm in love with somebody else. I want a divorce. I've been waiting for Dane to move out because I didn't want him to witness what's going to unfold." "What's the difference?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "He'll know what's happening now. At least he's older now. He'll understand." Liam's words were slurred, but each one hit me like a physical blow. "I want you out of the house tomorrow." "I'm bringing my girlfriend home. She's pregnant with my child." The room spun around me. Pregnant. He'd gotten someone else pregnant while we. "You need to leave tomorrow, Vivian. This is my house. My name is on the deed." I stood there in our kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd celebrated Dane's first A+ report card, where we'd had birthday parties and Christmas mornings, and watched the man I'd loved for half my life destroy everything we'd built. When Liam woke up the next morning, I was still sitting in the living room. I hadn't slept. I couldn't sleep. My eyes felt raw and swollen from crying, and I probably looked exactly as broken as I felt. "What's wrong?" he asked, stumbling into the kitchen. "Is Dane okay?" The concern in his voice for our son after what he'd said to me made my chest tighten. "Is it true?" I asked quietly. "About you stopping loving me years ago? About the pregnant girlfriend? About wanting me to move out?" He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something cold settle in his eyes. "Yes, all of it is true." "Why?" The word came out like a whisper. "I worked so hard to be a good wife. Am I not a good wife to you?" "You're a good wife," he said, his voice matter of fact. "But I'm bored. There's no spark in our relationship anymore." "Who is she?" I asked. "Someone who's 100% better than you. You let yourself go, Vivian. Look at you. You look older than 42. You've gained so much weight lounging around the house. You stopped taking care of yourself. You embarrass me when we go out." Each word was a knife, precisely aimed to cause the most damage. "So here's what's going to happen," he continued, pouring himself coffee like we were discussing the weather. "You're going to sign the divorce forms. I get the house since it's in my name. You leave today unless you're okay living with the new queen of the house. Susan is pregnant with my child." "Susan? My cousin Susan?" The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. "Fine," I said, standing on shaking legs. "I'll leave. Don't worry, I'm not completely heartless. I'll give you your fair share. But wait, you haven't contributed financially and you're broke. You've lived off my income for years. I'll give you alimony in advance, $10,000. Don't fight it, you can't afford a lawyer. You leave today." Then he left for work, leaving me alone in the house that was no longer mine. After Liam left for work, I stood in the middle of our living room, his living room, and realized I had nowhere to go. 24 years of marriage, and I was homeless. I packed my essentials into 2 suitcases, clothes, toiletries, a few photographs of Dane, and the small jewelry box my mother had given me before she died. Everything else, the furniture we'd picked out together, the dishes we'd received as wedding gifts, the memories embedded in every corner of this house, I had to leave behind. By evening, I found myself at the Sunset Motel, sitting on the edge of a bed that smelled like disinfectant and despair. The $10,000 Liam had given me felt heavy in my purse, but I knew it wouldn't last long. At 7 o'clock, I called Susan with trembling fingers, my cousin, the woman who'd been at my wedding, who'd helped me shop for clothes when we were preparing for 8-year-old Dane's arrival, who'd sat at my kitchen table countless times over the years, who cried in my arms when her rich boyfriend left her. "Susan," I said when she answered, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's Vivian." "Oh." There was a pause, and I could hear her sigh. "I was wondering when you'd call." "How could you?" The words came out broken, raw. "How could you do this to me, to our family?" "Vivian, listen." "No, you listen." I found my voice, anger giving me strength. "You're my cousin, Susan. You've been in my house. You've eaten at my table. You've watched me love my husband and son for years. How could you sleep with my husband? Because he came to me, Vivian. He was unhappy. He told me how lonely he was, how you two had grown apart. So you decided to fix that by sleeping with him?" I was shaking now, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles were white. "You decided to get pregnant with his child?" "I didn't plan for this to happen," Susan said, but her voice lacked any real remorse. "But it did happen, and now I'm carrying his baby, his real baby, his blood, something you could never give him." The cruelty of her words hit me like a physical blow. "How dare you?" "Face it, Vivian, you let yourself go. You became boring. You stopped being the woman he married. I'm everything you used to be, except I can give him what you never could, a biological child." "I loved him," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I loved him for 24 years. And maybe that was enough for a while. But people change, Vivian. People want more. Liam wants more. You destroyed my marriage." "I didn't destroy anything. Your marriage was already over. You just didn't see it. Liam told me he stopped loving you years ago. He was just staying for Dane's sake." "Susan, please," I begged, my voice breaking. "Please don't do this. We're family. I'm your cousin. I've always been there for you." "Well, this is life," she said, her voice bright and unapologetic. "We were meant for each other, whether you like it or not. I'm sorry it hurts, but I'm not sorry it happened." "Give me the phone." I heard Liam's voice in the background, stern and commanding. Liam? Susan's voice became sweet, loving. She's calling. Give me the phone, Susan. There was a rustling sound, and then Liam's voice came through the line, cold and final. Vivian, stop calling here. This is my house now, Susan's house. You don't belong here anymore. Don't contact us again. Liam, please. I said don't contact us again. Susan doesn't need the stress while she's pregnant. Find somewhere else to put your drama. Then the line went dead. I sat there in that dingy motel room, holding the phone to my ear long after the dial tone started, wondering how 24 years of marriage could end with such cruelty. Wondering how the man who'd once held me while I cried about not being able to have children could now use that same pain as a weapon against me. But mostly, I wondered how I was going to survive this. I've been living in the Sunset Motel for 2 months now. $10,000 sounds like a lot until you realize it's all you have left in the world. I've been rationing every dollar, eating canned soup and crackers, trying to make it last while I look for work. I was out applying for a dishwashing job at a diner when my phone rang. I'd missed the call, but when I saw it was from Dane, my heart clenched. I couldn't let him know. I couldn't be another burden on his successful, busy life. When he called again that evening, I answered with the brightest voice I could manage. Hi, sweetheart. How are you? Mom, I've been trying to call Dad, but he's not answering. I have some news I wanted to share with both of you. He's just busy with work, I lied, the words tasting bitter. Well, I tried calling the house phone too, but Aunt Susan answered and said she was pregnant with Dad's baby. Mom, what's going on? And why did Dad tell me not to contact him or Susan again? He said he has his real child now and that I'm not his blood? Dane's voice cracked on the last words, and I felt my heart shatter completely. He said he thought he loved me, but now he realizes he doesn't. Mom, what happened? What did I do wrong? I couldn't hold it back anymore. The tears came in torrents as I told him everything. The divorce, the betrayal, the motel, the job hunting, the $10,000 that was slowly disappearing. Where are you right now? Dane's voice was sharp with anger and concern. The Sunset Motel. But honey, I didn't want to worry you. I'm handling this. I said, no, you're not handling this alone. I'm coming to get you. Stay exactly where you are. Then Dane hung up. When Dane arrived at the motel, I saw my reflection in his horrified expression. I'd lost weight. Not the healthy kind, but the kind that comes from stress and skipping meals. My clothes hung loose. My face looked gaunt, and my eyes probably told the story of every sleepless night since my world fell apart. Mom, he whispered, pulling me into his arms. Oh, Mom. I broke down completely then, sobbing into his shoulder like I was the child and he was the parent. I've been applying everywhere, I said through my tears. I was an accountant before I married your father, but no one wants to hire someone who's been out of the workforce for 20 years. I finally applied to be a dishwasher at Murphy's Diner, but they haven't called me back. You're not going to be a dishwasher, Dane said firmly. You're not going to work at all unless you want to. I'm going to take care of you. Dane replied. I can't be a burden on you. I replied between sobs. You're not a burden. You're my mother. You took care of me when I was 8 years old and scared and alone. You loved me. You supported my dreams. You made me feel like I belonged somewhere. Now it's my turn. He looked around the dingy motel room, and I saw his jaw clench. Pack your things. We're leaving. I actually called you because I had a surprise for you and Dad, he said as we loaded my few belongings into his car. I was going to tell you both together, but he trailed off, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. What surprise? I asked. You'll see when we get to California. The house looked like something from a magazine, modern, beautiful, with large windows that let in streams of golden California sunshine. It sat on a quiet street lined with palm trees, and I could see the Pacific Ocean in the distance. Dane, I breathed, staring at the stunning home. How did you afford this? He smiled, and for the first time in months, I saw joy in his eyes. My business has really taken off, Mom. I have 50 employees now, and I just opened a downtown office. I was going to tell you and Dad that this house was a gift from me to both of you. I wanted you to move here, wanted Dad to retire early so you could both enjoy your golden years. His face grew serious. I wanted to take care of the people who took care of me, but since Dad has made his choice and told me not to contact him again, well, this house is yours, Mom. All yours. I stood in the driveway of this beautiful home, this gift from the son who loved me even when the man I'd married for 24 years had decided I wasn't worth loving anymore. I can't accept this, I whispered. Yes, you can. You gave me a home when I needed one. You gave me love when I was just a scared little boy. You believed in me when I wanted to start my business. Now let me give you a home. Looking at this house, at my son's face full of love and determination, I realized something. I had been wrong about losing everything. I'd lost a husband who didn't deserve me and a cousin who had never been a true friend. But I hadn't lost what mattered most. I hadn't lost my son. I hadn't lost the love we'd built together. I hadn't lost my strength or my worth. Maybe this wasn't an ending after all. Maybe this was a beginning. We're going shopping, Dane announced the morning after I'd settled into my new home. Dane, I have clothes. Mom, you've been wearing the same 3 outfits for weeks. You deserve better. He smiled, that determined look I remembered from when he was a teenager learning to code. We're getting you a whole new wardrobe. Clothes, shoes, jewelry, perfume, everything. The shopping trip was overwhelming at first. I'd forgotten what it felt like to try on beautiful clothes, to look in the mirror and see someone worth investing in. Dane was patient, encouraging, insisting I try on things I would never have considered. This color looks beautiful on you, he said as I emerged from the dressing room in a flowing emerald dress. It brings out your eyes. Next was the salon, an expensive one with marble floors and soft lighting. They cut my hair, styled it, did my makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I'd almost forgotten existed, confident, beautiful, alive. I want you to see a doctor too, Dane said as we drove home, just for an executive checkup. Make sure you're healthy. I'm fine, sweetheart. Mom, you've been through tremendous stress. Please, for my peace of mind. The doctor confirmed what I already knew. I was healthier than I'd been in years. The stress was gone, replaced by something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Weeks passed in a blur of contentment. I loved waking up in this beautiful house, loved the view of the ocean, loved having a purpose again. I'd started helping Dane with his business, using my accounting skills to manage his finances. It felt good to be useful again, to remember that I was more than just a discarded wife. Dane, I said one evening as we sat on the deck watching the sunset, if you ever get married, I want you to know I'll move out. I can find a smaller place. I don't want your future wife to feel uncomfortable. He looked at me with surprise. Mom, when I get married, I'll make sure my wife understands how important you are to me, and if you're not comfortable, I'll move out. I actually bought the property 3 houses down. I was planning to rent it out, but I could live there instead. This house is too big for just one person, I protested. I'd be fine in an apartment. Absolutely not. This house is a gift from me to you. Let's talk about this when the time comes, okay? I nodded, my heart full. This was what family looked like, not the cruel dismissal I'd received from Liam, but this fierce, protective love. 3 years passed. I thrived in ways I'd never imagined. Working from home, helping Dane build his empire, I discovered that I was still a damn good accountant. My confidence returned, my joy returned. I was no longer the broken woman who'd lived in that motel room. I was myself again, better than myself. Mom, I have some news. Dane said during our Sunday morning coffee, there's going to be an interview. A reporter from the local news wants to feature my business on their business and lifestyle segment. That's wonderful, sweetheart. You deserve the recognition. The thing is, he continued, her name is Wendy Lester. She's new to the station, but she's really talented. She wants to interview me at the office about the business, but she also wants to interview you at the house. She said the story isn't complete without showing the family behind the success. My stomach fluttered with nerves. Me? On television? You don't have to if you don't want to. But Mom, you're part of my success story. You supported me from the beginning, and now you're helping me run the financial side of things. People should know about the amazing woman who raised me. He said. The interview was scheduled for the following week. Wendy Lester arrived at the house with her camera crew, and I was immediately struck by how beautiful and professional she was. She had kind eyes and an easy smile that put me at ease. Mrs. Simpson, she said, shaking my hand warmly. "Thank you so much for agreeing to this. Your home is absolutely stunning. Thank you, and please call me Vivian." The interview flowed naturally. Wendy asked about raising Dane, about supporting his business dreams, about our life in California. I found myself laughing, telling stories, feeling proud of the life we'd built together. "I can see where Dane gets his determination," Wendy said with a smile. "It's clear he learned from an incredible mother." After the crew finished filming, Wendy lingered, admiring the house and the view. "I'm sure you met my son Dane already for his interview," I said, an idea forming. "How about you come here for dinner sometime? I'd love to cook for you." Wendy's face lit up. "I'd love that. He seems like a wonderful man." The segment aired the following week. I watched from my living room, amazed to see myself on television, poised, confident, happy. The camera showed Dane's impressive downtown office, his team of employees, the scope of his success. Then it cut to me in this beautiful house, talking about family, about love, about second chances. Gone was the broken woman from the motel. In her place was someone I barely recognized, a woman in expensive clothes, her eyes bright with pride, her smile genuine and radiant. I looked beautiful. I looked happy. I looked like a woman who had found her way back to herself. Across town, in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment that smelled of old carpet and broken dreams, Liam Simpson sat in a second-hand recliner, a cheap beer in his hand, watching the evening news. Susan was in the kitchen, their 2-year-old daughter playing at her feet with toys from the dollar store. The beautiful house he'd once owned was gone, foreclosed on when the company he'd worked for went under 6 months after the divorce. His department manager position was now just a memory, replaced by a clerk job at a discount store that barely covered their rent. When Wendy Lester's lifestyle segment came on, featuring local tech entrepreneur Dane Rowan, Liam's attention was caught by the familiar name. Or rather, the name that was no longer familiar. The camera panned across an impressive downtown office. Dane Rowan built his multi-million-dollar IT consulting firm from the ground up, Wendy's voice narrated, but he says none of it would have been possible without the support of his family. Liam's beer stopped halfway to his mouth as Dane appeared on screen. Confident, successful, wealthy. This was the boy he'd told wasn't his blood, the son he'd cast aside for a real child. Then the segment cut to the house, the breathtaking, expensive house. And there, sitting in what looked like a palace, was Vivian. But this wasn't the Vivian he'd left. This woman was radiant, dressed in clothes that probably cost more than he made in a month. She spoke with confidence about supporting Dane's dreams, about their beautiful life in California, about the joy of watching your child succeed. "Mom has always been my biggest supporter," Dane said in his interview. "She's not just my mother, she's my business partner, my advisor, my best friend. Everything I am, I owe to her." The camera showed Vivian laughing, her eyes bright with pride and happiness. She looked 10 years younger than when he'd last seen her. "Liam," Susan's voice was sharp from the kitchen. "That's Vivian, isn't it? And Dane? But why is his name Rowan now?" Liam felt his stomach drop. He changed his name. He dropped Simpson. The realization hit him like a physical blow. When he'd told Dane he wasn't his blood, when he'd cut off all ties, Dane had responded by erasing the Simpson name entirely. The boy he'd raised from age 8 to 26 had chosen to honor his adoptive mother's maiden name instead. "Look at that house! Look at how she's living!" Susan continued, bouncing the crying toddler. "That's not fair, Liam. Dane owes you too. You raised him." Liam was quiet for a long moment, remembering the last conversation he'd had with Dane, the cruel words about blood and real children, the finality of telling him never to contact them again. "I cut ties with him, remember? Just like what you want me to do," he said finally. "I told him he wasn't my blood. I told him he wasn't my real son. But you were still his father for years. You deserve something," Susan screamed. Liam looked at his daughter, then at Susan, then back at the television where Vivian was talking about second chances and new beginnings. "No," he said quietly. "I don't deserve anything." For the first time in 3 years, Liam Simpson understood exactly what he had thrown away. And for the first time since that night, he'd come home drunk. He felt the weight of regret settling in his chest like a stone. He questioned himself every day, if he did the right thing, meaning, is Susan really worth it? The excitement he felt with Susan is long gone, especially when she spends most of his money until he's in deep debt. He stayed because of his real child. He thought about Vivian, on how she would always put her husband first, even if it means she won't have anything for herself. He told her that she let herself go, but now he realized that he is the reason why she looked like that. She never complained. He would always see her happy. Dane, his adopted son, made him proud that he grew up to become a good son. The regret and pain he feels for saying hurtful things toward Dane. But regret didn't pay the bills that were piling up on their kitchen table, and Susan's demands were getting louder every day. "We need to visit them," Susan announced 3 days after the interview aired, throwing a stack of unpaid bills onto the coffee table. "Look at this, Liam. Rent, utilities, groceries. We can barely afford anything. And there they are, living like royalty in California." Liam looked up from his newspaper, one he'd found discarded at the bus stop because they couldn't afford a subscription anymore. "Susan, I told you. I cut ties with him. I told him he wasn't my blood, that he wasn't my real son." "So? People say things when they're angry. He's a grown man now. He'll understand. You raised him from age 8 to 26. That has to count for something." Their daughter, Emma, toddled over to Liam, her diaper sagging and in need of changing. But they were down to their last pack, and payday wasn't until Friday. "Besides," Susan continued, her voice taking on the manipulative tone he'd grown to hate, "look how successful he is. Millions of dollars, Liam. And we're living like this? It's not fair. You gave him a home, food, education. He owes you." "He doesn't owe me anything," Liam said quietly, but even as he said it, he could feel his resolve weakening. The job at the discount store paid minimum wage. Susan hadn't worked since Emma was born, claiming she needed to stay home with the baby, though mostly she just watched television and complained about their financial situation. "If you won't think about yourself, think about Emma," Susan pressed. "She's his half-sister. He should want to help her. And Vivian, she always liked me before all this happened. Maybe she'll listen to reason." "Vivian hates you, Susan. You destroyed her marriage. That marriage was already over. And anyway, people forgive, especially family." Liam looked around their cramped apartment, at the stack of bills, at his daughter in her saggy diaper, at the woman who'd promised him happiness and delivered only debt and demands. Maybe Susan was right. Maybe it was worth a try. "Fine," he said finally. "We'll drive down to California, but I'm not promising anything, and if he tells us to leave, we leave." Susan's face lit up with triumph. "He won't tell us to leave. We're family." As she bustled around making plans, Liam wondered when exactly he'd become the kind of man who would show up at his estranged son's door begging for money. When he'd become someone who would use a 2-year-old child as emotional leverage. But the bills on the table seemed to mock him, and his pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. The gleaming office building in downtown San Diego was everything Liam had expected and more. Glass and steel reaching toward the sky, expensive cars in the parking lot, and a lobby that probably cost more to furnish than he made in a year. "Rowan Tech Solutions," Susan read from the directory, bouncing Emma on her hip. "Floor 15, penthouse level." The elevator ride up felt like an eternity. Liam's hands were sweating, and he could feel his cheap suit sticking to his back. Susan had insisted they dress up for this, but their dress-up clothes only emphasized how far they'd fallen. The receptionist at Rowan Tech was polished and professional, her smile faltering slightly when she took in their appearance. "We're here to see Dane," Susan announced before Liam could speak. "We're his family." "I'm sorry, but Mr. Rowan is in meetings all day. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but he'll want to see us," Susan insisted. "I'm Susan, and this is Liam, his father. This is his sister, Emma." The receptionist's expression remained neutral, but Liam caught the slight tightening around her eyes. "Let me check with Mr. Rowan." She disappeared into an inner office, and Liam could hear muffled conversation. When she returned, her smile was even more strained. "Mr. Rowan says he can meet you at Cafe Luna on 5th Street in 2 hours. He's currently in an important meeting, but will make time for you then." 2 hours. Dane was making them wait 2 hours in a strange city with a toddler. The message was clear. "You're not important enough to disrupt my day." "Fine," Liam said, his voice tight. "We'll be there." Of course, there was no meeting. Dane just needed time to prepare and to call me. "Mom," his voice was calm, but I could hear the underlying tension when he called. "The time has come." I knew immediately what he was talking about. We'd discussed this possibility many times over the years, that Liam would eventually show up, probably desperate, probably wanting money. "Where are you meeting them?" I asked. "Cafe Luna. Can you be there in about an hour? I want you there for this." "Of course." "Are you ready?" "I've been ready for 3 years, Mom." When I walked into Cafe Luna an hour later, I spotted them immediately. Liam and Susan sat at a corner table, and the contrast was stark. They looked exactly like what they were, people who had fallen on hard times, trying to maintain dignity in clothes that had seen better days. Emma was crying, and Susan looked frazzled, trying to calm her. Then I saw Liam's face when he looked up and saw me approaching. The shock was immediate and complete. This wasn't the broken woman he'd left in that motel room 3 years ago. I was wearing a designer dress that fit perfectly. My hair was professionally styled, and I moved with the confidence of a woman who had reclaimed her life. I looked beautiful, successful, and completely at peace. "Hello, Liam," I said as I approached their table, my voice cool and controlled. "Susan." Dane stood to kiss my cheek, and I saw Liam notice how I smiled at my son, a smile full of warmth and pride and love, a smile I'd once given him. "What do you want, Liam?" I asked as I sat down, not bothering with pleasantries. "Why are you here without calling for an appointment? I thought you didn't want to have anything to do with us anymore." The words hit their target with surgical precision. I watched Liam's face flush as he remembered his own words from 3 years ago. "Don't contact us again." Emma chose that moment to start crying louder, her wails echoing through the upscale cafe. Other patrons turned to stare, and I could see Liam shrinking under their disapproving looks. "Vivian?" Susan jumped in, her voice artificially sweet. "You look wonderful. Doesn't she look wonderful, Liam?" My gaze shifted to Susan, and I felt something cold and dangerous flash in my eyes. "I asked Liam a question, Susan. I'm sure he can answer for himself." Emma's crying continued to fill the awkward silence, and I waited. I had all the time in the world now. "Look, Vivian," Susan started, bouncing Emma more frantically. "I know things ended badly between us, but we're still family. You don't get to talk here," I cut her off, my voice sharp as a blade. "If you say one more word, Dane and I will leave." Susan's mouth snapped shut, her face flushing red with humiliation. Liam cleared his throat, his hands trembling slightly as he reached across the table. "Vivian, Dane, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything I said, everything I did. I was wrong. Stop." Dane's voice was calm, but there was something devastating in its quietness. "You want to know something, Liam? I've had 3 years to think about this moment, 3 years to imagine what I'd say if you ever came crawling back." He leaned forward, his eyes never leaving Liam's face. "Imagine you had stayed with Mom. Imagine you hadn't cheated on her. Imagine you hadn't cut us off." His voice was conversational, almost gentle, which somehow made his words cut deeper. "You should have been living in that house with us right now. Retired. Probably golfing. You love golfing, don't you? I remember you always talking about wanting to play more rounds when you retired. Or maybe you'd be traveling with Mom. You wanted to see Paris, didn't you? I remember you telling me that when I was 15. I watched Liam's face go pale. I knew he remembered those conversations. Lazy Sunday mornings when he talked about his dreams for retirement, about the places he wanted to visit with me, about finally having time for the golf game he'd always loved, but never had time for. "Instead," Dane continued, his voice still devastatingly calm, "you chose her over us. You told me I wasn't your blood. You said you thought you loved me, but now you had your own blood, your real child." He gestured toward Emma, who was still crying in Susan's arms. "So tell me, Liam, why are we here again? Why are you sitting in this cafe looking like you haven't had a decent meal in months, begging for help from people you threw away?" The words hung in the air like a death sentence. I watched Liam's mouth open and close, but no sound came out. Everything Dane had said was true, painfully, devastatingly true. Without a word, Dane reached into his briefcase and pulled out a checkbook. The sound of his pen scratching across the paper was deafening in the silence. When he finished writing, he tore off the check and placed it on the table. $50,000. Then he pulled out a document, crisp, professional, clearly prepared long ago. I've been carrying this for 2 years, Dane said quietly. I knew this day would come eventually. I watched Liam's eyes scan the paper. It was a legal agreement stating that upon receipt of the enclosed payment, both parties agreed to no further contact of any kind. $50,000, Dane continued. In exchange, you never contact my mother or me again. Ever. I saw Liam stare at the check, his hands trembling. It was more money than he'd see in 2 years at his current job. It would solve all their immediate problems. But before he could speak, Susan exploded. 50,000? That's it? Her voice rose dangerously, causing other cafe patrons to turn and stare. Look at how you're living. Look at this place, your clothes, that house on TV. Emma is your sister, Dane. I'm not related to her, Dane replied calmly, his voice carrying the same cold finality Liam had once used against him. Susan's face twisted with rage. You ungrateful bastard. Fine. You know what? I'm going to tell everyone how you turned your back on your family, on the father who adopted you and raised you. Go ahead, Dane said calmly. In what world do you think you deserve the lifestyle my mom has? You don't deserve this. You destroyed a marriage, broke up a family, and now you want to be rewarded for it? Go ahead and tell everyone, I added, my voice soft but deadly. Tell everyone your version. But how stupid do you think people are, Susan? Do you really think no one knew what happened? The neighbors saw you coming and going from my house while I was still living there. Our friends saw you two together at restaurants while you were supposedly helping him through the divorce. Family members knew you'd been calling him for months before he left me. I watched Susan's face go white. I made sure people knew the truth, I continued, my smile sharp as glass. I made sure everyone understood exactly who destroyed a 24-year marriage. So please, by all means, tell everyone your version. I'm sure it will be fascinating to hear how you spin being a homewrecker into victimhood. Now, Dane said, his voice cutting through the tension, do you want the $50,000 or not? Because this is a one-time offer that expires in the next 60 seconds. I watched Liam look at Susan, his face hard with anger and embarrassment. Susan, you need to shut up, or I'm throwing you out of our apartment when we get home. You have embarrassed me enough with that foul mouth of yours. Susan's mouth snapped shut, her eyes wide with shock. Liam turned back to me, his voice breaking. Vivian, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for hurting you, for hurting Dane. I regret everything I did to both of you. I could see Susan couldn't believe what she was hearing, but she didn't dare speak. I never stopped thinking about you both. Liam continued, his hands trembling. What if I hadn't done what I did? Would I be in this situation? Like I said, Dane replied quietly, you could have been retired by now, golfing with Mom, probably making friends with powerful retired businessmen. Dane reached for his checkbook again. Take the $50,000, sign this document, and take care of your daughter. He paused, his voice softening slightly. For what it's worth, thank you for taking care of me when I was a child. He wrote out another check for $100,000. This is for you, Liam, then another for $50,000, and this is for Emma's future. Now, this will be the last time we see each other. Susan, apparently learning nothing, had the audacity to ask, how about me? I looked at her with cold amusement. In your dreams. Then Dane and I left the cafe, leaving Liam, Susan, and a screaming Emma behind. The drive back to Oregon was miserable. Emma screamed for most of the journey, and Susan demanded half of the money the moment they got home. Liam angrily refused. The money was for debts and bills. 5 years later, they divorced. Susan had cheated on Liam with a wealthy man who turned out to be Emma's real biological father. When Liam discovered the truth through a paternity test, he demanded alimony from Susan, since she had been the one who cheated and deceived him about Emma's parentage. The irony wasn't lost on him. The woman who had destroyed his first marriage by being a homewrecker was now being held accountable for destroying their marriage the same way. But Susan's karma wasn't finished yet. The wealthy man she'd been cheating with took Emma and left Susan behind, claiming he wanted to raise his daughter without the drama of her mother's lies and manipulations. Susan found herself completely alone. No husband, no child, no money, and nowhere to go. The woman who had once smugly told Vivian, "This is life," now had no life to speak of. At least Liam still had some money left from Dane's gift to start over. Meanwhile, in California, I hummed as I cooked dinner in my beautiful kitchen. The house was filled with laughter and the sound of little feet running through the halls. Dane had married Wendy 3 years ago, and their daughter Lisa was now 2 years old. Wendy loved me like the mother she'd never had. I'm so grateful to have a mother-in-law as kind as she often said. I love being around you. And I am blessed to have a kind, beautiful, and loving daughter-in-law. We all lived together in the big house, 3 generations of chosen family, bound by love rather than obligation. Dane had recently learned about Liam's situation through business contacts. Liam was working as an office manager again, thanks to Dane quietly reaching out to someone who owed him a favor. "Have you forgiven him?" Dane asked me one evening as we watched Lisa play in the garden. "I forgave him a long time ago," I replied. "Holding on to hurt only hurts me in the long run." I looked at my son. "What are you thinking?" "I want to take him back," Dane said quietly. "He worked hard for me too, Mom. He's one of the reasons I learned to love coding." I nodded. "I'll respect whatever decision you make." Wendy, overhearing from the kitchen, smiled at her husband with renewed admiration. She had married a man with a beautiful heart. A few days later, Dane walked into that modest office building in Oregon. His heart was pounding. He found Liam behind a desk that looked exactly like the kind he'd started with 20 years ago. Standard issue, nothing special, functional. When Liam looked up and saw his son standing there, his face went white. "Dane," he whispered, half rising from his chair. He wanted to hug him but didn't dare move. "Hi, Dad," Dane said simply. The word Dad hit Liam like a physical blow. His eyes immediately filled with tears. "Would you like to have lunch, son?" Dane asked. They went to Murphy's Diner, the same place they used to go when Dane was a kid, where Liam would order pie and let Dane have extra whipped cream. The vinyl booths were the same, the menu unchanged, but everything else was different. They talked about the 5 years that had passed. Dane showed Liam pictures on his phone, his wedding to Wendy, their daughter Lisa, the life he'd built. Liam's tears fell freely as he looked at the photos. "I'm so happy for you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have a beautiful family." "Why are you here?" Liam finally asked, though his heart was already hoping for an answer he didn't dare believe. Dane took a deep breath. "I want you to come live with us, Dad. I want you to retire, go golfing, travel to Paris like you always dreamed." Liam stared at him, unable to speak. His son, was calling him Dad again and offering him everything he'd thrown away. "But what about your mother?" Liam asked through his tears. "Is she okay with this?" Dane smiled. "She said yes, but you have to buy her flowers if you want to get back in her good graces." 6 months later, Liam was living in the beautiful house in California. I saw him as a friend now. Nothing more, nothing less. And Liam was grateful for even that. We had separate rooms, separate lives, but shared space and shared memories of the son we'd raised together. We went golfing together on Sundays. We traveled to Paris with Dane, Wendy, and Lisa, fulfilling dreams that had been deferred but not destroyed. We watched our granddaughter grow, and Liam learned what it meant to be part of a family built on forgiveness rather than obligation. He never stopped being grateful for his son's enormous heart. And sometimes, when I watched Dane playing with Lisa in the same garden where he'd once taught an 8-year-old boy to throw a baseball, I remembered that the most important things in life aren't about blood at all. They're about choice, about love, about second chances, and about coming home. My name is Vivian Rowan, and this is my story of falling apart and putting myself back together again. This is my story of losing a marriage but keeping what mattered most. This is my story of learning that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is a second chance, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve the peace that comes with letting go. And sometimes, just sometimes, that second chance leads to something more beautiful than what you had before.
If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Don't forget to follow for more content just like this. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.